the original idea for the Terminator was that he would, be a true infiltrator unit, and that's why he could slip into a crowd and not stick out the way Arnold Schwarzenegger does. But then Cameron kind of changed his thinking. He thought, no, this is a massive machine. It's going to take a giant body to hold this advanced machinery. And some ideas for the Terminator actually in the first movie, which didn't come to play, but Cameron picked up again for Terminator 2, was the original idea was Skynet would send 2 Terminators. One would be the Cyborg, as seen in the film, and the other would be the liquid metal Terminator. But the special effects just weren't there yet for what would become the T-1000 in the next film. So he abandoned the idea early on. And also, there were supposed to be 2 Resistance fighters who went back, one for each Terminator. And Kyle Reese's, companion, whoever that person would have been, they were going to materialize inside of a fire escape and die, like be impaled that way. Which is interesting because starting in the second film, they established the whole kind of orb protection for the time displacement equipment you make. So anyway, it's interesting ideas to think there have been multiple people. These are things that other movies and the TV show Sarah Connor Chronicles also pick up on down the road. So some trivia, of the movie itself here. Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous line, "I'll be back." There's a lot of discussion about this because originally in the script, it was going to say "I'll come back," but they didn't like the sound of it, and even then when they changed it to "I will be back," Arnold was pushing hard for "I will be back" because he thought a machine wouldn't use a contraction, kind of like Data from the Next Generation.
Right.
But Cameron and him kind of got an argument about it, and Cameron said, "I don't tell you how to act, so don't tell me how to write." So that ultimately, "I'll be back," and it looks like Cameron was right on that one. Also, speaking of the "I'll be back" scene, and this is a great continuity error. Once I learned about this, to me, it's almost as good as the Stormtrooper hitting his head in Star Wars Episode 4.
Let me guess what you're going to say.
Yes,
the lights.
Yes, the lights. You see, when he says "I'll be back," he comes back with the car, and it's the visual cue is like the guy at the desk looks up and he sees the headlights in his face. When the car crashes through the wall, there's no lights on the car. I don't know how they missed that. It's very obvious. Hey, are the lights on? I don't know, but pretty good gaffe in my opinion. Now, the future Terminator who infiltrates the human camp that Kyle Reese is staying at. It's played by Franco Colombo, and he was, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was a Mr. Olympia title winner and was a close friend of Arnold, and that's kind of how he got him in there. And it's, again, people, it's a misconception about the Terminator franchise. There are other skins, other models. The Arnold model is the 101, okay? But the make of the series is the T-800. So there you go. The puppet of Arnold Schwarzenegger's face, the kind of animatronic puppet that he uses in the mirror, took 6 months to create.
Wow.
And, So, 1984, right? But Stan Winston Studios ended up doing a lot of the animatronics here. They had a combination of stop motion as well as a full-size prop for the T-800 in the factory at the end. And they realized that even though they made it with real metal and it looked great, but it was really heavy. And it caused them a lot of trouble in production to kind of move this thing around. Now, there is a lot of discussion about the audio mix on this film. It was mixed in mono in 1984 because the budget was too low for them to make it in stereo. And a stereo remix was produced. And then when MGM acquired the rights to the Terminator, they made a 5.1 stereo mix, which was created for the 2001 DVD. But this is very contentious because it changes a lot of the familiar sounds of gunshots because they were using stock audio because they had a lower budget back then, but they've kind of rebuilt the sound mix, and a lot of purists disagree and don't like this. Not necessarily the fact that it's available, but the fact that the other mix is no longer available, and it makes you a sound is really half of the experience, and to watch a movie that you've watched over the years so long and have different sound really has a different feeling. It kind of takes you out of it. Are you one of these audiophiles, Brandon? Because I actually agree. I think changing sound effects like that is very distracting when you know a movie back and forwards like some of these movies I do.
I would say yes. Now, here's the thing. Our friend Jimmy Goss mentioned to me online, he's like, if you want the mono audio, I can give it to you. And I'm like, well, the DVD that I have has it. But I did watch it in 5.1, and I really enjoyed the 5.1 mix. But, I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but I don't know that I would notice. Now, one movie that I know that's kind of weird is I've got Seven Samurai on the Criterion edition, and they did this for their DVD and their Blu-ray. They've got like a 5.1 mix, and I don't like it. Like, it sounds echoey and tinny, but that's a mono movie from the 50s, right? So I don't know why they would think to put a 5.1 mix of this movie, because they're purists, but they did. So I listened to that in mono, and I mean, the last time I watched my original Star Trek TOS run, I watched it with the original effects, but I also watched it in mono. So, I don't know. I kind of half of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of movies like the Batman movies, which actually, as of this recording, recently came out in 4K, they redid the sound mix there, and it's very distracting because they have these stock, gunshots and these gun battles, and it's like, that's not what that sounded like. And actually, our friend Ken Tripp, executive producer on UFB here, he and I recently did an episode on our Star Trek podcast, Standard Orbit, talking about the director's edition of Star Trek: The Motion Picture and how they did something very similar. And like a lot of sound effects are different, and it's when you grow up watching a movie over and over and over a certain way, and it's different. Like, whoa, hold on a second. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm all for updating things, but I think much like the Star Wars special editions, let's have the other original version available for people still. That's where I come down on it.
Yeah.
But,
and James Cameron's generally pretty good on that. So when our friend Jimmy Goss said that James Cameron won't allow the mono mix anymore, that surprised me because, James Cameron was the first director that I knew of that was all about like director's editions and special editions and stuff. But all of his movies had both versions available all the time. So it would surprise me that he wouldn't want the mono mix available.
Well, we shall see when the new Terminator box set comes out with Terminator Dark Fate, if they have a new options for the sound mixes for all these. But
I should totally buy that because I've got Terminator on DVD. I got Terminator 2 on DVD. I got Terminator 3 on HD DVD. So I should probably pick that up.
I have the Terminator Anthology Blu-ray set, which has Terminator 1 through 4, and that's really all I need.
What about Genesis?
I haven't decided how I'm going to watch Genesis yet for this podcast, but I had no intention to ever watch it again or own it. But spoilers for my take on that movie in a few episodes.
You love it.
But our final bit of trivia here is, of course, about the great Harlan Ellison, which you teased at the beginning of the trivia. Harlan Ellison, famous science fiction author, he sued James Cameron, claiming that while he enjoyed The Terminator, it plagiarized 2 Outer Limits episodes that he had written, Soldier and Demon with a Glass Hand. And also, the concept of Skynet could possibly be interpreted as being taken from his Harlan Ellison short story, I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream. So this lawsuit was settled out of court, and they added a special acknowledgement to Harlan Ellison at the end of the film, which you see in the credits. Yeah. So Harlan Ellison, man, to the end, always looking out for his bottom dollar. Famously, he had a lifelong feud with Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek, when he wrote what many consider the greatest episode of Star Trek, The City on the Edge Forever. That episode went on to win a Hugo Award for Best Original Screenplay, but Roddenberry had rewritten it, so Harlan Ellison was so upset that he submitted it himself as a short story and won a different award for that. So, and then he would never stop talking about how much he hated Star Trek and Gene Roddenberry. So it does not surprise me that Harlan Ellison was on the lookout for any possible infringement to his perceived copyright, and they just figured, look, pay the guy off. Well, I will slap something on the end credits. We'll settle out of court. I don't think that's a fair thing because concepts like this are so not copyrightable. There's enough similarity though, where the studios thought, all right, let's just take care of this and be done with it. So
yeah,
there you have it.
I wonder how much they settled for. Did you find that out?
Out of court. I'll never know. I mean, I don't know. I didn't dig that much, but but the Terminator did very well at the box office. So
good. Excellent. Right on. Well, let's jump into our discussion. That was some wonderful trivia, Zach. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your hard work that you do for that. You're like a machine.
I will not stop until you are dead. Let's jump into this right now. This is what I really want to. What fascinates me more than almost any other aspect of this franchise is the time travel in it. Mm-hmm. All right, and this film, The Terminator, is a perfect time travel movie. It is a closed loop of time travel. It is a predestination paradox, and this is how I interpret it. Right?
Okay.
And there are actually some deleted scenes that play into this. I mean, I'll bring those up near the end. It's not really trivia, just more conversation pieces. But the way I see it, there's time travel is a constant. Like whatever is going to happen has already happened. It's all part of a predestination paradox. So Kyle Reese and the Terminator were always going to come back in time, and therefore, Skynet was created because of the T-800, the chip in the arm being found, and John Connor exists because Kyle Reese came back in time, and him and Sarah Connor conceived John Connor. So that's a perfect closed loop there. That's the way I always interpreted it. That's the way I've always seen it, and that's what I think is part of the brilliance of this film. But apparently, a lot of people seem to think like, oh, well, what about John Connor's original father? And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. So I don't. That's the way I see it, Brandon. Where do you come down on how the time travel works? At least, and not necessarily the franchise because the rules do change, but in this first film.
Okay, so in the first film, yes, I agree with you that it is a perfect predestination paradox. But let's start with the fact that I personally don't believe that time travel can ever happen. Okay, like, I don't believe that...
Well, no, I agree with you, but I think this is the only way it could happen.
I don't think so. Because it can't happen, okay? And the reason why is because I believe that time is linear, and because I believe that time is linear, a predestination paradox could never happen, right? Because at some point, there had to have been a first with linear time, and I believe in linear time. So at some point, either... somebody else sent Kyle Reese back in time, and then it became a destination paradox. But again, on your take, yes, if you just take the movie for what it is a perfect predestination paradox movie, and I'm okay with that. But I also don't believe that could ever happen that way because time is linear. So
well, but I agree, but I think we have different shades of agreeing because I also believe time travel. The only way it's ever going to be possible is if the time traveler becomes part of history anyway. Like it always would have happened. Like if we ever invent time travel, anyone who goes back in time would have already been there and done the thing. It's already part of the record. You don't realize it yet, but that's what it would be. But yeah, ultimately time travel.
Yeah, that can't happen.
That's the only way it could work.
Nope. Nope.
All right. Well, I think it's just it's so brilliant here because we have this idea of this future war and machines and all that. But even the opening, text there says the battle will not be fought in the future. It will be fought here tonight. And so you really scale it down between one guy and one Terminator. Yeah, that's what it says.
Holy smokes!
Because I was thinking like, if they were ever, and God forbid they ever remake this, right? But they could make it more from just like Sarah Connor's perspective and kind of make it a general. See, the problem is it's a known property now, so it's never up for interpretation. But they go a while in the movie trying to explain away the Terminator, like, oh, he was wearing a bulletproof jacket, or he could have punched through this window because he was high on drugs. And you can't do it with the Terminator, but I would appreciate some movie to kind of pick up that angle and like have you like wonder if like, hey, is this guy crazy? Are both these people crazy? Or is there really time travel and robots involved? Because it's clear, like the movie presents it, yes, this is happening. We know that Kyle's not crazy. We know that Arnold Schwarzenegger is a cyborg from the future. But you know what I'm saying? Like a different angle on the story would be interesting to see.
So like, I guess, I think I noticed at this time, because I've seen Terminator 2 so many times, they didn't show how these people came here in this movie, did they?
Well, you see some lightning, and then they get up.
Right.
Or in Kyle Reese's case, he falls down.
Right, but you don't really see anything.
Yeah, you don't see an orb or anything like that, like you do in all the other movies. You just see
the lightning and whatnot in the background, and then the sky. So, I mean, to me, because I've seen Terminator 2 so many times, there's a big red glowing orb, and and it's because it's metallic, and so I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So,
because you have the subplot with Captain Terrell,
yes,
and Lance Hendrickson, Bishop from Aliens, or Frank Black from Millennium. Take your pick, right? And that's an interesting subplot to me because, and I'll go ahead and bring it up here. There are a lot of deleted scenes in the movie, and they kind of have, it's not, they just flesh them out more. They don't have more of a plot per se, but there's more like back and forth between those guys and more at the police station. And ultimately, because throughout the that segment of the movie, you see like, Lieutenant Trexel, he's like kind of quiet and like listening to all this, and Lance Hendrickson's character is like kind of talk, oh man, this guy's crazy, this is great stuff, blah blah blah. He's like, shut up, he's like,
yep.
he has an open mind to it. It seems, and then in the deleted scenes, he actually gives at the end there he gives Kyle his gun.